In the wake of the release of Dave Chappelle's latest Netflix stand-up special, The Closer, Netflix is facing a great deal of internal backlash from some of its employees. Dave has long since faced criticism for his views on trans culture, and his latest special once again addresses the issue. Join Trender as we take a look at how Netflix just destroyed Dave Chappelle's career. Dave Chappelle's latest stand-up special, The Closer, was recently released on Netflix, and it stands as his 6th original release on the platform. Over the course of his Netflix releases, he's tackled subjects like trans rights and so-called cancel culture. Dave's views on the trans community in particular have disturbed some audience members, a fact of which has only caused Dave to talk about the issue more in subsequent specials. In The Closer, Dave once again speaks about how he feels about the trans community, this time expressing some of his most disparaging comedy yet. However, both Dave and Netflix are keen to point out it's just comedy, and Dave is reportedly actually a trans ally in real life. The Closer is meant to be Dave's last special for the Netflix platform. Dave's return to Netflix came after a long career hiatus that was kicked off by its own share of drama. At the peak of his initial success with his Comedy Central program, Chappelle's Show, Dave notoriously fled from Hollywood with the vague claims there was something corrupt going on in the industry. Several years later, Dave returned to Hollywood in a world that had since been overtaken by a more politically correct brand of comedy. Dave's refusal to get with the times has been met with as much praise as it has backlash. Dave's debut on Netflix was a big draw for the streaming platform, and it makes sense from a business perspective that they've continued to stand behind the controversial comedian. However, things are becoming a bit more complicated for the streaming giant now, and Dave's comments about the trans community are sparking more outrage than ever, with some of this outrage even coming from within the walls of Netflix's own studios and offices. Even as the walls are seemingly closing in, Netflix co-CEO Ted Sarandos refuses to budge in his support of Chappelle and his controversial comedy. Once again, it's hard to fault the man from a business perspective. The Closer has been another hit for the platform, and it's only one of many hits Netflix has released lately. The past few years have been a renaissance for the company, and Chappelle's specials have been a noteworthy part of what's made it so popular. According to Ted, comedy is always going to offend somebody. Those who have criticized Dave's latest special the most are doing so from the perspective that the views Dave expresses about the trans community could potentially lead to an increase in violent crimes against its members. But Ted has adamantly expressed he doesn't believe anything Dave says in The Closer or in any of the comedian's previous specials for Netflix is capable of inciting violence against the trans community. Dave's jokes in his latest special saw him aligning himself with another controversial figure who's caught a great deal of ire from the trans community, J.K. Rowling. Rowling has been labeled a TERF, which is an acronym standing for trans-exclusionary radical feminist. J.K. Rowling is better known as the author of the Harry Potter books and has since become somewhat of a martyr for the TERF movement. Dave claimed to be part of the movement himself in his latest special, although he did so with his tongue placed firmly in cheek. In his latest special, Dave talked about a trans woman he had become friends with. This woman was Daphne Dorman, and she gave Dave permission to use her in his stand-up routine. But the trans community felt this was name-dropping a trans friend just so he could make anti-trans jokes. To make matters worse, the woman was bullied for standing up for Chappelle and wound up committing suicide because things got so bad. After Daphne Dorman committed suicide, Dave's critics were divided even further. Those in support of Dave's comedy, including the man himself, expressed that her suicide had been the result of bullying from the trans community in the wake of his special. Contrastingly, critics of Dave expressed they believed the suicide had likely been sparked by Daphne's guilt for allowing herself to be used in such a way by Dave. Either way, the situation stands as an example of how the trans community is more at risk for self-harm, as well as violent crimes perpetrated by others. Incidentally, this is exactly the issue that critics of Dave's comedy say they're trying to address. Dave addressed the issue of Daphne Dorman in The Closer from the perspective that her suicide might not have been caused by bullying from the trans community, but that the bullying certainly hadn't helped. While Daphne faced criticism from the trans community, critics have expressed skepticism that actual bullying ever occurred. Hey, if you're enjoying this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Trender for a lot more. Although Dave Chappelle considers himself something of a trans ally, it's hard to deny that his jokes express a good deal of transphobia. But many defenders are quick to point out that shocking humor has been a part of comedy throughout history, and Dave's humor can be simply seen as a way of dealing with these issues in the public consciousness. Dave even jokingly claimed to be romantically involved with Daphne at some point, suggesting he may be more of a trans ally than both detractors and some defenders will admit. His comedy about trans issues hasn't even been all negative, expressing a distaste for anti-trans bathroom laws in one of his routines in The Closer. The popularity of The Closer, as well as Dave's specials, speaks to the fact that the larger demographic may not be all that concerned with politics. There are those who put Dave on a pedestal for his remarks against cancel culture, and some of these supporters might not be the kind Dave wants. Still, Dave's latest special has proved to be as popular as ever, and Dave appears to be going out with a bang if this will be truly his last on the platform. It's just sad that this bang had to result in such division within Netflix. Those who've criticized Netflix for allowing Dave's special to be released have cited the massive amount of eyes that Netflix attracts with its programming. The streaming giant has nearly 200 million subscribers, and many believe the company has a responsibility to consider what kind of views it's sharing with them. However, Netflix has expressed that it isn't so much concerned with expressing specific views as it is with expressing a variety of different ones. Netflix has certainly allowed for a variety of voices to be heard on its platform, with the company pointing to Hannah Gadsby and her 2018 special Nanette as an example of its own inclusionary attitude. While Nanette was certainly a progressive release for the platform, even Hannah Gadsby herself was quick to point out that Netflix releasing one positive piece of media does nothing to negate the negative views expressed in Dave's comedy. Still, Netflix is hesitant to admit that there even are negative views in the specials Dave has released. The Netflix employees who have been angered or affected by Chappelle's The Closer include Jaclyn Moor, showrunner for the program Dear White People. In the wake of The Closer's release, Jaclyn quit. According to Jaclyn, it was simply a matter of not wanting to be a part of a company that gives a platform to views that could result in them becoming the victim of a hate crime. While Jaclyn's views may be extreme to some, they are simply emblematic of the larger conclusions the trans community has come to about the way they feel about their political enemies. Even if The Closer represents Dave's end on Netflix, it certainly doesn't represent the end of the war between the streaming giant and the trans community. Dave expressed in The Closer he was done making jokes about the community, but that didn't stop them from reacting to the special with more vitriol than ever. Another negative internal reaction came when one of the company's own Twitter accounts expressed distaste over the release of The Closer. The Twitter account goes by the handle @most and is meant to promote the cornucopia of LGBTQ content on the platform. Finally, there's the issue of Tara Field, who was fired after posting a viral Twitter thread that criticized Chappelle, as well as Netflix's decision to release The Closer. Tara is a senior software engineer with the company and was let go for a short period of time before backlash forced Netflix to give her the job back. Many trans allies and employees at Netflix have also staged a walkout, meant to further show the company that its allowance of hateful views on its platform will no longer be taken lying down. Now it's time to hear from you. Comment down below to share if you're on Dave and Netflix side in this latest battle, or if you believe it's truly time for comedy to move past the point where it thinks trans people are even remotely funny. Let us know in the comments section below. And before you go, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to Trender if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.